Well, and I think I'm going to give you some hope in this video, even though it may sound like doom and gloom, but not really. I'm giving you reality on the situation. What I think we're really going to go full circle. A lot of times the American Indians talked about that the Americans here in the United States that have immigrated to the United States will eventually adopt the American Indian ways. I think that's going to come about at one point in time, and I think it's coming about fairly quickly. There's a number of things coming up in not just, I'm not talking financially, but it's going to reflect things financially. But what's coming up is actual, I guess you would call it Mother Nature. Some people are actually going to interpret it as divine intervention. But one of the most lucrative and important things you'll be able to do in the future is farming. Farming. The ones that will survive are going to be closely associated with the farming industry, even if you're not doing the actual farming. Maybe you're building tractors or repairing tractors. And, you know, it's something actually Jim Rogers is betting on. I'm not too keen on the guy because he actually is on the opposite side of the world, doesn't really give it. He's like, he figures the United States is going down. I'm betting on China. That's what he's doing. But, you know, I'm sticking right here in the United States. But I want to tell you that really we're going right back to the most basic things. And it's gonna come about on us, not just because of like a currency crisis, a debt crisis. It's going to be a global climate change, getting colder crisis, and it's a normal thing. It's not something that man did or mankind did or anything like that. It's just coming about. We are going to actually, the ones that are going to survive in the United States are going to be adopting closer to the American Indian ways, much closer to the American Indian ways. I'm going to tell you some doom and gloom, but I'm also going to give you hope for this because it has a lot of hope for the people that, the message actually has a lot of hope for the everyday people. The message is really seriously doom and gloom for the people on the top. And I'm not just trying to like, you know, sometimes I know there's a lot of people out there on YouTube that are trying to tell you like the too bigs to fail will fail and all this. Well, I'm going to tell you really why directly the too bigs to fail will fail. And, you know, how even like they have, you know, through media like Hollywood, they made it look like farming is such a lowly profession. It's not. It's not at all. It's probably the highest profession of all, I would think. Maybe that or healing maybe might be number one also. Healing or farming. But as far as, you know, they try to dissuade people from actually getting into these type of professions, like to say, you know, oh, you're important, you have to have a title, you don't get your hands dirty, you don't do this, and you're special, and you just make a lot of money. But when it comes down to it, when your basic survival, you need food, you need shelter, you need clothing, and that type of thing. But now, I also want to point out something, you know, there's been a big, before I actually get into what I'm really going to talk about, but I want to point out a couple things. I know there's been a big, you know, propaganda out there about, you know, snowfall averages falling over the years. Now, over the last few years, they have definitely changed in the East Coast. You know, they pointed out like Washington D.C.'s snowfall has been running lower and lower and lower. Last year we had Boston got clobbered, but now this year, you know, before they'd even finish the year, this chart would be skyrocketing again, you know, so there goes your running average. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm just going to make a statement, and, you know, you can argue it, but we'll see. It's going to come out in a couple years. It's going to be very, very apparent by 2017, 2018, and it's already apparent already. We are going into a much colder climate, and what that means is food production is going to be greatly curtailed, and what that means is that food prices are going to go way up. It's going to affect the poor. It's going to affect even the middle class, and it's going to affect discretionary spending. It's going to affect the bottom line of many retail companies. It's going to affect the price of even commodities. You know, it's almost ludicrous right now that oil is this low, but it's when it goes. Usually what happens with commodities, when they go too low, they go too high, they spring the other way. But I also want to tell you that there's a number of events going on even this year in the world. Like I know people are now aware of the major snowstorm. And you say, well, maybe it's a one-time event that happened on the East Coast. First time it ever had 2 feet of snow from the same snowstorm in New York City and Baltimore for the same snowstorm. Now, New York City did not break an all-time record for this one snowstorm, but they missed it by, I think, 1/10 of an inch. But they have broken a record for the most amount of snow in 24 hours. There's been a number of records broken everywhere, and I know even in the Jersey Shore, in certain New Jersey Shore, in certain areas where they had the snow bands come in. I don't know why they didn't report it, but some places where they're definitely over 3 feet high. Some places locally with snow bands. Now, if that's not a record, but you know what's going on even throughout the world. In Okinawa, Japan being the southernmost island chain of Japan, first time they had snow ever, a snow accumulation ever. It was in the city of Nago, which is in the northern side. Well, the island is only, I think it's 64 miles long or something like that. It's 2/3 the way up the island in Nago. First time they ever saw snow and where it accumulated. First time ever. In Taipei, Taiwan, they had snow first time, I think, in 80 years. There's been snow in Moscow, like obviously, but record snow and record cold in Moscow, beyond breaking 50-year records. It's going on across the globe. There's also extraordinarily cold weather in Hong Kong. There's also snow in parts of Vietnam that never ever got snow. I know there's some places in Vietnam that could get snow, but there's other places. Now, I think where this is going to affect the bottom line and the bankers, like I know they're making bets on agriculture. I know they're making bets probably right now on energy. But when you're looking at the banker establishment, a lot of it is really concentrated in the city of New York. It would not take it would just really take one major problem whereby the entire infrastructure of the financial system could collapse. I know, like, the top bankers probably have their emergency places out in Montana or wherever. I mean, a lot of people are aware that, the system could fall apart. But as far as, like, the infrastructure itself of the financial system, it is not just the top bankers that are pulling all the levers. It is actually, there's thousands and tens of thousands of people under them in support industries that make everything run. Most of it being concentrated in New York City and around New York City. That area actually is subject to a lot of problems, and I'm going to say something else here, because as we go into this global mini ice age, it also corresponds with more solar flares, more cosmic energy, and that also makes it more probable that we can have a EMP by nature. Now, an EMP, an electronic magnetic pulse that destroys electronics by a weapon, would not be anywhere near as severe as if we had the 1859 Carrington event that occurred back during the last mini ice age that we had here in the United States. But the mini ice age we're coming up into actually is going to be something that is like from 400 years ago. It's going to greatly affect crop production. But I'm not going to hold my breath for when this is going to happen. And, it's a major concern to me because I do have a lot of electronic equipment. An EMP event will destroy all the machinery and all the computers and all the Bloomberg terminals and all that type of stuff, and just bring down the entire financial system. It is not something I'm holding my breath that'll happen this year or next year, but it'll happen, I think, during this next cold period on Earth that is actually a 400-year cycle. And when that happens, the entire elitist financial banksters, whatever you want to call them, they're through. They're through, and including their underlings. But if you were to survive, the one thing you need to do is to really get into farming. I need to get into farming. I know I have backup in 1 year food supply of 30-year shelf life freeze-dried food, but that is not a long-term solution. I actually need to get into farming too. But I do realize that the ones that are going to survive in the United States are going to be the ones that are very autonomous, very independent, and not dependent upon not just government, but not just dependent upon our modern society. The Amish, like in Pennsylvania, they're probably still thriving and prosper, probably more in greater than they ever have, because their skills are going to be in great demand, and their know-how is going to be in great demand. So, when I'm looking at, we were looking at money, and we looking at $100 bills. Everybody looks at $100 bills or $20 bills, Andrew Jackson's. When you're looking at farm produce, that is money. That is going to be worth so much more in the near-term future. And I'm saying near-term future because already this year, and we have not even gotten into the serious part of the global mini ice age yet, but it's already starting. It's becoming obvious. By 2017, 2018, it's going to get so severe that, well, even this year, the growing season is going to be greatly curtailed. But, like there was greenhouses in Japan where the roofs collapsed for snow, record snow, things like that has already happened. But and there's been snow on rice paddies and frozen rice paddies in Vietnam, things that never happened before. That's already affecting crop production. But what's even coming up 2 years down the road is going to be the beginning of it. 2017, 2018 is going to make this year look like nothing. And what's going to really be lucrative is any kind of agricultural produce. The ones that do not fear getting their hands dirty and working and are not lazy, they're going to be ones that are going to thrive and survive. The ones that are actually just looking at the markets, which way I got to put my money, maybe some of that's fine, but those type of people, they can actually lose everything in one shot due to an EMP. I don't think that is an outlandish statement to make, because when we go into this next 400-year cycle, it is going to be extremely likely that we have an event that might be more severe than the Carrington event of 1859. I know there's been some people that commented on my channel that the Carrington event of 1859, we've had EMPs as severe as that every 10 years. No, we have not. The Carrington event of 1859 actually fried telegraph lines and set paper on fire through the lines itself. We had nothing like that ever. If that happens today, goodbye freaking civilized society. It's done. The whole damn 9 yards. That'll be worse than any kind of military action by far. It would just affect the entire Earth. It depends on where it hits on the Earth, but then again, it will affect most of the Earth. It will affect most of the Earth. But in any event, right now it looks like on the East Coast we're having a temporary reprieve of cold weather. Maybe we'll call it the halftime. The halftime for the Super Bowl winter here, and it's going to get back to game time again with snow cover. But I want you to think that every time you're out there, you're dealing with snow or shoveling snow up north, which I'm down in Florida, I'm like, in a growing area, which is good. I want you to think that, one of the most important things that you can do for the future is maybe you can't start a farm, but you can start a garden, and you can even start a garden with potted plants where you can take, tomatoes and put them in pots and with some good soil and just grow that. And that alone is, taking a step in the right direction. Because I realize that people can't just go, from one step to, the opposite way inside of jump that way inside of a day. It's like, in other words, if a person has been used to sitting in a lounge chair, watching, movies or something with their clicker, they're not going to be able to run a marathon inside of a week. It's going to take, a lot of steps to get to that point. But, one of the reasons I also put out being semi off the grid, anything you do to be independent is important. But one thing people really need to concentrate on is growing food. In Japan, what's interesting is that they'll grow gardens on top of the roofs. I don't know why they don't do that here in the United States. I mean, yeah, I know the roofs aren't flat, that type of deal. But then again, If you look in New York City, there is a lot, and a lot of, not just New York City, but a lot of apartments, there are flat roofs. Now, obviously, maybe somebody will go up there and cause damage to your produce. That's another problem because the type of people we have here in the United States. But, there is always room to grow some kind of plants for your, survival. There's always room. You don't need to have, a 20, 40, 50 acre farm or something like that. As long as you have even a patio, I mean, even a little a balcony that has some sunlight on it, you could put like 5 pots on there, and you can get started. That, to me, is going to be your number one survival. Everybody's not going to do it for the most part because it's, it's easier just to go to the store. But as you realize, what you're going to find out is that food prices are going to skyrocket as this weather changes. There's going to be a lot more demand upon the farmers. And if you look actually at the average age of the farmer in Japan today, they're 60 years old. Most people, the younger people in Japan, they went to, tech industry and stuff. I think the tech, I don't know what you could do about hardening, all the tech. That could be something, but nobody's doing it. I mean, maybe there is a way. I know you can make Faraday cages, but to me that's kind of impractical because you're not going to be walking around with a Faraday cage all the time or driving your car with a Faraday cage all the time. But there's probably other ways you could protect the electronic circuitry of everything because they do this in the military. I know they could do this across the board in the consumer area, consumer area too. But I think that when this happens, it's going to be like flipping the light switch off, whereby we're going to go right back to the Stone Age. And everybody that's not prepared for this, they're sunk. And also, even the ones that are the bankers up in New York or whatever it is, say the top people, they got a way to escape the city, and they can go up to Montana, and they got a place out there, and they're all set with supplies. Well, the whole infrastructure is not going to run anymore because 99% of the people that work for them are not going to be well prepared like that because they're totally dependent upon the top crooks. One reason I'm not involved in this kind of shit anymore because I realize, well, first off, most of the people that are filthy rich are not prepared for this type of stuff at all. They actually think that their insurance will take care of things. They think they can call somebody up and have something fixed. They don't know how to do anything themselves. But even if there's a few of them out there that have like backup to the backup to the backup, they're not going to. They wouldn't do anything for me personally. So I know, I know enough to avoid these type of filthy rich bastards because they're basically out for number one. But what's going to happen here, I think, in the United States is that it is going to be. It's not even just going to be the United States. It's going to be the entire world, and it's not going to necessarily be because of. I know there's government debt. I know there's like a slowdown in the economy. I know there's all these bureaucrats that are trying to like take over, like with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and all this. I know all this stuff. But really what's going to freaking catastrophically change the face of the earth is the climate. And it's not due to us, mankind, doing this. It's a normal cycle. When we had this like before, I mean, this actually caused, when they had a cold period start happening again, it helped bring about the collapse of the Roman Empire. That was one of the things, too. It even happened during the Middle Ages, too. When there was the warm medieval period was a time where everybody flourished. When it got colder, it went down. In our complex technological age, in our complex age where everybody's dependent on very, 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 very few farmers, before everybody used to be a farmer practically. It was a common profession. It was the most common profession out there. If you look back in the 1800s, you look at all the censuses, like loads of people were farmers. What's your occupation? Oh, farmer. A lot of them were. A lot of them, except in the cities. But even there, they were laborers, they were machinists, they were, they were weavers or whatever. They did something. They actually know how to do something with their hands. Today, they're all wrapped around the technology. I think the technology is going to go out the freaking window in a second. And one thing I'm worried about, though, is a lot of my special devices that use frequencies to help heal. I don't give a shit about you know other stuff too much, or maybe just store information. Whereas you have reams of paper and stuff, I don't like the idea that you could have to have, you could look things up a lot faster with a computer. But as far as like the markets and all that garbage, I really don't care. Even though I have money in the markets and stuff, I don't care. If all that crap just went down the toast, I don't really care. I'm not worried about it. I have my backups to the backups to the backups. I personally also need to get into some type of farming too, but I just want to state that when the United States does go down, the ones that are going to be surviving are the ones that are not only, you don't have to necessarily be off the grid, but you do have to know how to grow food. That's going to be vital. That's going to be your most essential commodity going, food, period. And I think a lot of people are going to be discussing, like, I know, like in the Canadian dollar recently, they're talking like, I forget what it was, about a box of cornflakes cost like 17 Canadian dollars. They're talking about the collapse of the Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar is not going to collapse all the way. I know these people are freaking saying it's going to go down to 2% of the American dollar. It's just going down with the oil. When the oil goes up, the Canadian dollar is going to go up. It's just, one currency doesn't collapse. A major currency like that, it's not going to totally collapse, at least like as far as the foreseeable future. But what is really going to happen is across the board, it's not going to be necessarily that the currencies are collapsing. It's the fact that the weather is going to cause extreme pressure on the food prices, which is going to take a lot of money out of the everyday person's pocket just to feed themselves, which means there's not going to be anything left over for discretionary spending for the retail environment, which is going to affect everything else. Nobody's going to be buying big ticket items because nobody's going to have money because they just need it. They use all their money for food. And if you're one of the ones that's involved on that side of the industry supplying the food, you're going to do very well. Thing is, that takes real work. Now, personally, I'd rather be the guy fixing the tractor. I don't know. I mean, to me, having grown up 11 miles away from New York City proper, farming is kind of like something I've never really delved into at all. But I'm going to start getting into some gardening or something with anything simple. And I do have a lot of freaking year's supply of all kinds of backup food and everything. But I do realize that, I need to learn something new here. I need to learn something new. And I'm also recommending that you learn something new. But I know how to fix a lot of, like, mechanical things. I know how to, put things together with framing. I know how to roof. I know how to put up fences. I know, which could be important for livestock. I know how to do a lot of mechanical things. So I'm not actually useless even if I was working on a farm. And I'd probably learn the agricultural side pretty quick. I don't think I'd, be bad at it. But, the only ones that are going to survive in this country are going to be the ones that are into farming. And you don't need, like I said, you don't need to be fully into it. The bankers, they're toast. And it's not just the bankers. It's going to be like, there's tens and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that are involved in these industries. And, compliance of all kinds of different things. It could be insurance industry. It could be, Sarbanes-Oxley compliance laws and, all these different things. Everything, there's a whole, most everything is involved around this kind of shit. I mean, it's like all these professionals, all these people that they got working for them, they're all going down. That industry, I think all the financial industry, anybody that's in the financial industry today probably has a sad future. I know a lot of times they think, it's always got to be around because of taxes, but I don't know. Because I think that, the whole thing is coming down to, and it's going to come down not because of, something they did financially. It's going to come down because of how the climate is changing. And I'm not talking climate change like the liars that are pushing for the global carbon tax. I'm talking about true science that the climate is actually getting colder now, and it's going to affect our food production. It's going to affect our food prices, and that'll drastically affect our economy because everybody's going to be spending all their money just on food. And, it's not going to be very apparent this year, maybe. Maybe it's going to start being apparent. I think it's more apparent maybe in Canada, but that's due to other reasons, due to the oil prices. But by the time 2017, 2018 rolls around, it's going to be very apparent. And it's going to get, by the time 2020 rolls around, it's going to be more, that's going to make 2017, 2018 look like a walk in the park. As a matter of fact, what happened last year with snow in Boston, what happened this year with snow in New York and even out west in Colorado and also Utah, and now also record snows in the Far East, where in Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, Moscow, and first time snow ever in Okinawa, Japan. It's going to actually create a situation. What's going to happen in 2017, 2018 is going to make that look like nothing. And then what happens in 2020 is going to be beyond that. The bottom is not going to supposedly occur till 2035 to 2060. And that's assuming we don't go into a major ice age. If we go into major ice age, nobody's going to be living in Canada except on the West Coast, maybe. That's about it. So, I just want to say that, the American Indian did well before there was a white man was here on this land. And, maybe it's a time to adopt their ways again, at least partially. And that's the only way you're really going to survive. It's not going to be a matter of click a button, go call my broker, and all this type of stuff. Because at one point in time, I think that whole electronic industry is going to fail. It's not going to fail due to the reasons other people are saying. I think it's going to fail due to high food prices, and it may fail overnight, not due to like something happening in the background where they can't control things, because I know they probably could control things. I think it may fail overnight to a Carrington event style electronic magnetic pulse event that happened, such as in 1859. We are coming up to the time where that is very, very possible, because, well, it coincides with mini ice ages. That's really what it is. And we're going into a more severe mini ice age than what happened in the 1800s. We're going actually more into the 1600s. And you're not going to notice it quite this year, but globally there's been a number of signs. But you will definitely within the next couple of years. So if you plan to be around, you got plenty of time to freaking prepare. And the way to prepare is actually to just get out there and do. You actually got to do it.